They mocked human bonds with beasts until his apex therapy companion arrived. The council chamber buzzed with the sounds of a dozen different species. Taemin stood at the center of the circular room, trying not to let his hands shake. Around him, representatives from across the galaxy sat in their designated sections. The Voroth clicked their mandibles, and what he had learned was amusement. The Elmer's tank bubbled with what their translator rendered as laughter. Even the normally stoic Kreth seemed entertained by what they were hearing. Dashmin had submitted his request 3 days ago. It was simple enough, or so he thought. Under the Galactic Treaty's medical accommodation clause, he had the right to bring his registered therapy companion to the station. He had filled out every form correctly. His medical records were attached. His therapist's recommendations were clear. Everything was in order, but now, standing before the council, he realized that order and understanding were two very different things. "Let me understand this correctly," Killoner said. The Voroth representative's translator rendering his clicks into flat, emotionless words. "You require the presence of a non-sapient creature to perform your duties? This is your claim?" Taemin took a breath. His chest felt tight, the way it always did when too many eyes were on him. "Yes, Representative. Under human medical protocols, therapy companions are a recognized treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. My condition is documented." "Fascinating," the Elmer collective speaker said, their voice echoing from the water-filled chamber. "We have analyzed your human medical data. There is no biological mechanism by which the presence of a simple animal could affect neural chemistry in a therapeutic manner. This appears to be a cultural superstition rather than medicine." The chamber filled with sounds that Taemin's translator interpreted as agreement. He felt heat rising in his face. This was going worse than he had expected. A Kreth warrior named Torvak leaned forward, his scaled face showing what might have been curiosity or contempt. "My species faces trauma through strength training and meditation. We do not need lesser creatures to hold our hands. Why do humans require such weakness?" The word hung in the air, weakness. Taemin had heard it before, in the whispers that followed him through the station corridors. The human who broke. The human who couldn't handle what happened. The human who needed special treatment, he wanted to explain. He wanted to tell them about the space station that exploded, about watching his entire research team die while he floated in the debris field for 6 hours before rescue arrived, about the nightmares that made him wake up screaming, about the panic attacks that left him frozen in the middle of his work, about how he couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't function until his therapist suggested a companion, but the words wouldn't come. They never did when he needed them most. "The human is silent," Killoner observed. Perhaps he recognizes the illogical nature of his request. From the human section of the chamber, Ambassador Daesung stood. He was an older man, gray-haired and dignified, and he looked angry. "Representative Killoner, I must remind this council that Article 7 of the Galactic Treaty is explicit. Species-specific medical accommodations must be honored without prejudice. Earth's medical establishment has recognized therapy companions for over 2 centuries. The scientific data supporting their effectiveness is extensive. For humans, perhaps," the Omer speaker said, "but we question whether this is truly medicine or merely emotional dependency. Your species forms attachments to animals in a way that no other sapient race does. You keep them in your homes. You name them. You mourn them when they die. This is not observed anywhere else in the galaxy." "That doesn't make it invalid?" Daesung replied sharply. Killoner's mandibles clicked again. "No, but it does make it suspect. Tell me, human Taemin, what kind of creature do you wish to bring to this station? A small mammal? A colorful bird? What simple pet do you require to function as an adult?" The mockery in the translator's flat voice was unmistakable. Taemin heard laughter from other sections. His hands were shaking now, and he couldn't hide it anymore. This was a mistake. He should never have applied. He should have just kept struggling, kept pretending he was fine, kept having panic attacks in private where no one could see. "The specific species is listed in my application," he managed to say. Yes, yes, Kilinar waved a chitinous limb dismissively. The council will review. But understand this, human. If we allow this, it sets a precedent. Next, you will all claim to need your emotional support animals. This station will become a zoo to accommodate human psychological fragility. More laughter. Taemin felt something inside him growing cold and hard. He had faced the vacuum of space. He had survived when everyone around him died. He had fought his way back from the edge of giving up entirely. And these beings who had never experienced what he had were calling him weak. Hannah was waiting outside the chamber when the session ended. She was a communications specialist, one of the few other humans on the station, and she had become his closest friend over the past year. One look at his face told her everything. That bad? She asked gently. Worse, Taemin said. His voice sounded hollow to his own ears. They think it's funny. They think I'm asking to bring a pet because I'm too weak to function without one. Hannah's expression hardened. What did Dae-sung say? He invoked Article 7. They have to approve it technically. But they made it clear what they think of the request. What they think of me. They walked through the station's main corridor. It was shift change, and beings of various species moved around them. Taemin noticed the Vorth who passed them chittering to its companion. He didn't need a translator to know they were talking about him. They don't understand, Hannah said. They can't. Most of them don't even have the concept of bonding with another species. To them, animals are just resources or threats. They've never had dogs greet them at the door or cats curl up in their laps. They've never experienced what we have with animals. Maybe they're right, Taemin said quietly. Maybe it is weakness. Hannah stopped walking and grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. Taemin, listen to me. Recognizing that you need help isn't weakness. Getting that help isn't weakness. The fact that humans learn to bond with other species, to find strength and comfort in those bonds, that's not weakness. That's wisdom. The Council doesn't see it that way. The Council, Hannah said firmly, is about to learn something about humans. About what we're capable of when we have the right companion. 3 days later, Taemin received the official notification. His request was approved, though the document was filled with conditions and restrictions. There were limits on where the animal could go, requirements for containment, liability clauses. But it was approved. Gasung called him to the administrative office. They voted in your favor, the ambassador said. Barely, several representatives lodged formal protests. There's going to be monitoring, Taemin. They're watching to see if this fails so they can use it as an example. I understand, Taemin said. Do you? Dae-sung studied him carefully. They expect a small dog or a cat, something harmless that they can point to and say, look at what humans need. When your companion arrives, there's going to be a reaction. I know. Dae-sung smiled slightly. Good, let them underestimate us. They've been doing it since we joined the Galactic Council. Show them what human bonds really mean. The transport was scheduled to arrive in 3 weeks. Taemin tried to focus on his work, but it was harder than ever now. The mockery in the council chamber had reopened wounds he thought were scarring over. His sleep got worse. The panic attacks came more frequently, but he held on because he knew what was coming. He knew who was coming. Beak was coming. And everything was about to change. They mocked human bonds with beasts, until his apex therapy companion arrived. The gossip spread through the station like fire through dry grass. Everyone knew about the human's emotional support animal. In the cafeteria, in the corridors, in the working sections, beings from across the galaxy shared their predictions and placed their bets. The Vorith workers wagered. It would be a small canine, probably a lapdog breed. The Elmer scientists predicted a bird of some kind, colorful but ultimately useless. The Kreth soldiers laughed among themselves, imagining the pitiful creature that would arrive. I heard humans sometimes keep rodents as companions, one Kreth said to his squad mates. Can you imagine? A warrior race that finds comfort in the presence of vermin? They all found this hilarious. Tae-min heard the whispers. He saw the looks. He endured it because he had no choice. Hannah tried to shield him from the worst of it, but the station wasn't large enough to hide. There were only 300 beings aboard, and news traveled fast in close quarters. "Ignore them," she told him one evening as they shared a meal. "Let them think what they want. They'll learn soon enough. Will they?" Taemin pushed his food around his plate. He hadn't had much appetite lately. "Or will they just see Beak as another reason to mock humans?" "They'll see Beak," Hannah said with certainty, "and they won't know what hit them." The transport arrived on schedule. The docking bay alert went out across the station, and somehow everyone seemed to know what it meant. When Taemin made his way to the bay, he found a crowd already gathered. Vorith, Ulmer in their mobile water suits, Kreth soldiers, and various other species all wanted to witness the arrival of the human's pathetic pet, Security Chief Iralvik. A Vorith with dark purple chitin stood by the airlock. "This is highly irregular," he clicked at Taemin. "I have reviewed the cargo manifest. It lists a single therapy companion. Why does a simple animal require a reinforced transport container?" Taemin didn't answer. His heart was pounding, but not from anxiety this time. He felt anticipation, hope, something he hadn't felt in months. The airlock cycled open. The transport crew emerged first, human freight workers who nodded at Taemin with knowing smiles. Then came the container. It wasn't small. The cargo unit rolled out on anti-gravity supports, massive and heavily reinforced. It was 3 meters long, 2 meters wide, and over 2 meters tall. Warning labels covered every surface in multiple languages. Danger. Apex predator, live cargo, extreme caution, authorized handlers only, maintain safe. Distance. The crowd's murmuring changed tone. Confusion replaced amusement. Several beings stepped back instinctively. "What is the meaning of this?" Ralovic demanded, his mandibles spreading in what Taemin had learned was alarm. "Your documentation said therapy companion, not dangerous fauna." "That's correct," Taemin said calmly. He moved toward the container while everyone else moved away. "Therapy companion? Certified and registered." Through the reinforced viewing panel, something moved. 2 yellow eyes appeared in the darkness, reflecting the bay lights. They were large eyes, hunter's eyes, and they were focused entirely on Taemin, a Kreth soldier named Vergash pushed to the front of the crowd. He had been one of the loudest mockers, telling anyone who would listen about how pathetic humans were. Now he stared at the container with his combat instincts clearly activated. "That is not a pet," he said. "That is a predator. I can smell it from here." "You're right," Taemin said. He placed his hand on the biometric scanner. "He's an apex predator?" "From Earth, a Siberian tiger named Beak." The container locks disengaged with a series of heavy clanks. Every being in the bay tensed. Several ran for the exits. Security personnel reached for their weapons, though Ralvik hadn't given the order to draw them yet. Taemin opened the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a massive white paw emerged from the container. It was the size of a dinner plate, with claws that gleamed in the bay lights. Another paw followed. Then a head, broad and powerful, with a pink nose and those striking yellow eyes. Beak stepped out into the docking bay, and the crowd gasped collectively. He was enormous. Nearly 400 pounds of pure muscle covered in white and black striped fur. His shoulder came up to Taemin's chest. When he yawned, showing fangs as long as human fingers, several aliens made sounds of terror. "Security!" someone shouted. "Contain it!" "Stay back," Taemin said firmly. He didn't raise his voice, but there was command in it. "Everyone stay back. He's not aggressive unless threatened." Beak padded forward, ignoring the crowd entirely. His eyes remained locked on Taemin. The tiger moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Each step was deliberate and silent despite his size. Ralvik had his weapon drawn now. "Human, step away from the creature. We will secure it properly." "No," Taemin said. "You won't." Beak reached him. The tiger lowered his head and pressed it against Taemin's chest, a rumbling purr vibrating through both of them. Taemin wrapped his arms around the massive neck, burying his face in the thick fur. For the first time since the council hearing, since the mockery, Since arriving on this station full of beings who didn't understand, he felt safe. The tension left his shoulders. The constant anxiety that lived in his chest loosened. He could breathe again. "Hello, friend," he whispered in Korean. "I missed you." Beak chuffed softly, the sound deep and resonant. The docking bay was completely silent now. No one laughed. No one mocked. They simply stared in shock at the sight of a human embracing one of the most dangerous predators from Earth, as if it were a gentle HOUSEC Tadhana stood at the edge of the crowd, fighting back tears. She had known what was coming, but seeing it still moved her. She had seen the before and after in Taemin. She had watched him suffer, watched him struggle, and now she watched him hold on to his companion like a drowning man finding solid ground. "By the void," a Ulmer scientist breathed. "That is what humans call a therapy animal?" "This is insane," Vergash said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "How can you trust such a beast? It could kill you in seconds." Taemin finally pulled back, keeping one hand on Beak's head. The tiger remained calm, patient, watching the aliens with mild interest but no aggression. "Trust isn't given," Taemin said. "It's earned. Beak and I have been together for 3 years. He saved my life." "How?" Rovik asked. His weapon was still drawn but pointed at the floor now. "How does a predator save a life by being present?" Taemin met the security chief's compound eyes. "I was dying," he said simply. "Not physically, mentally. The trauma was killing me piece by piece. I couldn't sleep without nightmares. I couldn't work without panic attacks. I couldn't function. Then my therapist introduced me to Beak. He was trained specifically for trauma survivors. When I have a flashback, he grounds me. When I panic, his presence calms me. When I can't face the day, he gives me a reason to get up. He doesn't judge me. He doesn't think I'm weak. He just exists with me, and that's enough." Ambassador Daesung had arrived during the explanation. He stood beside Hana, pride evident on his face. "Humans have lived alongside animals for thousands of years," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We domesticated them, yes, but more than that, we partnered with them. We hunted with them. We protected each other. We shared our homes and our lives. That bond is in our genetics now. It's part of what makes us human. And Beak represents the pinnacle of that bond. A predator who chooses to protect rather than hunt. A beast who offers comfort rather than fear." "The council approved this?" a Vorath engineer asked in disbelief. "They did," Daesung confirmed. "Under Article 7, they had no choice. But I suspect they, like many of you, expected something small and harmless. Something they could point to as proof of human weakness." Beak sat on his haunches, still pressed against Taemin's side. His tail swished slowly, the only sign of his awareness of the attention. "This isn't weakness," Taemin said. He felt stronger now, with Beak beside him. The words came easier. "This is survival. This is adaptation. Humans learned long ago that we're stronger together. Not just with other humans, but with other species. We're the only race in the galaxy who can form bonds like this. That's not a flaw. That's our gift." The crowd began to disperse slowly, beings returning to their duties but casting glances back at the human and his tiger. The story would spread through the station within the hour. The human's pet wasn't a pet at all. It was an apex predator, and he trusted it completely. Ralvik holstered his weapon. "There will be regulations," he said. "Escorts when you move through public areas. Restricted zones. Regular behavioral evaluations." "I understand," Taemin said. The security chief studied Beak for a long moment. The tiger stared back calmly. "I have fought dangerous creatures on a dozen worlds," Ralvik said quietly. "I recognize a killer when I see one, but I also recognize control. That beast could tear through half this station before we stopped it. Yet it sits peacefully because you ask it to. That is remarkable." "That's Beak," Taemin said, scratching behind the tiger's ears. "That's my friend." Later, in his quarters, Taemin sat on the floor with Beak sprawled beside him. The tiger took up most of the available space, but Taemin didn't mind. He ran his hands through the thick fur, feeling the solid warmth, the steady breathing, the simple presence that meant everything. They mocked human bonds with beasts until his apex. Therapy companion arrived. The emergency council meeting happened less than 12 hours after Beak's arrival. Taemin wasn't invited, but he heard about it from Dae-sung later that evening. The station's command structure was in chaos. Representatives from every major species demanded explanations, security reviews, and in some cases, immediate removal of what they called the threat. Torvak was the loudest, Dae-sung told him over coffee in the human quarters. He claimed you brought a weapon onto the station under false pretenses. Said it was deception. Taemin sipped his drink, feeling Beak's weight against his legs where the tiger lay on the floor. What did you tell them? The truth. That every document was filed correctly. The Beak's training certifications are legitimate. That his behavioral record is spotless. That he has worked with over 40 trauma survivors in his career and has never shown aggression toward a handler or civilian. Dae-sung smiled slightly. Kilanar tried to argue that Earth certifications shouldn't be trusted. I reminded him that would mean invalidating every medical credential from every member species. That shut him up. Are they going to make me send him back? No, but there are restrictions. Beak must stay in your quarters except for scheduled exercise periods. When he's in common areas, security must be notified in advance. Any aggressive behavior, even perceived aggression, will result in immediate removal. Dae-sung's expression became serious. Taemin, they're looking for an excuse. Don't give them one. Beak won't. He's trained for this. I know. But others might try to provoke a response. Be careful. The ambassador was right to warn him. The first week with Beak on the station proved challenging in ways Taemin hadn't anticipated. The restrictions meant he had to plan every movement outside his quarters. Security escorts followed them everywhere. Aliens pressed themselves against walls when they passed. Some showed curiosity, but most showed fear. His work improved dramatically, though. For the first time in months, Taemin slept through the night. His anxiety levels dropped. He could focus on his reports and analysis without his mind spiraling into panic. Hannah noticed the difference immediately. You look human again, she said during a shared lunch. Not like you're barely holding yourself together? I feel human again, Taemin admitted. I didn't realize how much I was just surviving until Beak got here. Now I'm actually living. A young human researcher named Ji-woo started visiting regularly. She was working on a xenobiology project comparing different species' relationships with animals. She spent hours observing Taemin and Beak, taking notes, asking questions. It's incredible, she said one afternoon, watching Beak respond to Taemin's subtle hand signals. The level of communication between you is beyond what most species achieve with their own kind. He reads your body language, your tone, your emotional state, and you trust him completely. Trust goes both ways, Taemin explained. Beak trusts that I'll take care of him, keep him safe, understand his needs. I trust that he'll do the same for me. The other species don't have anything like this, Ji-woo mused. The Voroth have hierarchical relationships based on function. The Elmer have collective consciousness but no individual bonds. The Kreth respect strength but don't trust. Humans are unique in forming these cross-species partnerships. She was right. Taemin saw it in how the aliens watched them during Beak's exercise sessions. Station regulations required a secured cargo bay for the tiger's daily activity. Security set up barriers and observation windows. What started as a safety measure became something else. Every session drew spectators. They watched Beak move through obstacle courses Taemin set up. They watched the tiger respond to commands in Korean. They watched the play sessions where the massive predator became gentle, careful not to hurt his human companion even in roughhousing. A Ulmer scientist named Pharrell attended every session. Her mobile water suit stationed at the observation window. She took extensive notes, occasionally asking questions through the intercom. How does he know when you're experiencing distress? She asked one day. Tae-min was sitting on the floor of the bay, Beak's head in his lap. Heart rate, breathing patterns, body tension, scent changes. He picks up on things I don't even realize I'm expressing. When I start to have a panic attack, he intervenes before I'm fully aware it's happening. Remarkable, Pharrell murmured. The Elmer have studied human psychology extensively. We believed your trauma responses were neurochemical issues requiring medication. We didn't consider that a biological companion could regulate those systems. That's because you don't have companions, Iru said. She had started attending the sessions too, always observing, always documenting. You have colleagues and collective members, but you don't have friends the way humans do. You especially don't have animal friends. No, Pharrell agreed. We don't. I'm beginning to see that as a limitation. Not everyone was coming around, though. Vergash, the Kreth soldier who had challenged Taemin in the docking bay, continued to view Beak as an insult to proper strength. He made his opinions known in the common areas, loudly declaring that true warriors didn't need beasts to fight their mental battles. Kreth face our trauma directly, he announced one evening in the cafeteria. We strengthen ourselves through adversity. We don't hide behind animals. Taemin was present but didn't respond. He had learned that engaging with Vergash only escalated situations. But Hana, sitting beside him, wasn't as patient. Having support isn't hiding, she said sharply. It's smart. Humans figured out thousands of years ago that we survive better together. That includes with animals. Maybe that's why we're thriving while warrior cultures like yours are dying out. Vergash's scales darkened with anger. He stood, his full height impressive even among his own kind. You dare insult the Kreth? I dare speak truth, Hana shot back. Security intervened before it escalated further, but the tension remained. Taemin knew it wasn't over. The confrontation came a week later. Taemin was walking Beak through one of the approved corridors during a scheduled exercise period. 2 security officers walked ahead, 2 behind, as regulations required. They were passing through a common area when Vergash appeared. The Kreth had clearly been drinking. His movements were slightly uncoordinated, and his speech came louder than usual. There he is, Vergash announced to the handful of beings in the area. The weak human and his crutch. Taemin kept walking. Excuse us, please. No, Vergash stepped into their path. I want to understand something. Your beast is supposed to help you, yes? Make you strong? But you're still weak. I can see it. You still fear. You still struggle. So what good is it? Vergash, you're intoxicated, one of the security officers said. Step aside. I'm asking a legitimate question. The Kreth's voice rose. Kreth warriors face our fears through combat and meditation. We become stronger. But humans bring animals to do what? Hold their hand? Make them feel better? It's pathetic. Taemin felt his chest tightening. The confrontation, the attention, the judgment, it was triggering the very responses Vergash was mocking. His heart rate increased. His breathing became shallow. Beak felt it instantly. The tiger moved smoothly, placing himself between Taemin and Vergash. He didn't snarl or show teeth. He didn't crouch or prepare to attack. He simply stood there, massive and unmovable, a living barrier. Vergash stumbled backward. For all his bravado, his instincts recognized danger. See, it's aggressive. I told you this beast was dangerous. He's protecting, Taemin said, though his voice shook slightly. There's a difference. Protecting you from what? Words? Truth? Vergash laughed, but it sounded forced. This proves my point. You need a monster to defend you from simple conversation. Stand down, Vergash. The security chief Rolvik had arrived, his tone commanding. You're in violation of station conduct protocols. Return to your quarters. The Kreth soldier looked like he wanted to argue, but Rolvik's authority was absolute. He backed away, still muttering about human weakness and dangerous beasts. When he was gone, Taemin knelt beside Beak. His hands were shaking, but the tiger's solid presence helped. He focused on breathing, on the feel of fur under his fingers, on the steady calmness that Beak radiated. Are you all right? Rolvik asked. I will be, Taemin managed. The security chief watched them for a moment. That creature didn't attack, even when provoked. Most predators would have. He showed restraint because you needed restraint, not violence. That's what he's trained for. No, Relvik said thoughtfully. Training can teach behaviors. But that was more than behavior. That was understanding. He knew what you needed in that moment and provided it. The Vorith paused. I'm beginning to see why humans value these bonds. Later, back in his quarters, Taemin sat with Beak on the floor. The tiger was sprawled out, completely relaxed now that they were in their safe space. Taemin leaned against the warm bulk, feeling his heartbeat slow to normal. They think you're just an animal, he said quietly. They don't understand that you're more than that. You're my partner. My friend. My anchor when everything else falls apart. Beak chuffed softly and turned his head to lick Taemin's hand with a tongue like sandpaper. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. Outside, the station continued its routines. They mocked human bonds with beasts until his apex therapy companion arrived. The distress call came during the night cycle. Alarms blared through the station, dragging everyone from sleep to emergency stations. Taemin jerked awake, heart pounding, before Beak's weight against his side reminded him where he was, safe on the station. Not floating in the debris of an exploded research facility, he forced himself to breathe and checked his communicator. Priority alert. All personnel to report to their departments. The briefing room was chaotic when he arrived. Representatives from every species crowded around the holographic display showing a moon orbiting nearby. Titan IV, a mining colony. Ambassador Daesung was already there, his face grave. What happened? Taemin asked Hannah, who stood near the human section. Systems failure at the mining colony, she said quietly. Catastrophic. The main reactor leaked toxic gases into the residential sections. Over 100 miners are trapped inside. Multiple species, including Kreth and Vorith. The display showed the colony's layout. It was a maze of tunnels carved into the moon's interior. The toxic cloud was spreading through the ventilation system, and the miners had retreated deeper into the complex. Trying to stay ahead of the contamination, Commander Ralvik was coordinating the rescue efforts. We've sent standard rescue drones, but the electromagnetic interference from the reactor failure is scrambling their sensors. We've deployed 3 teams so far, but the darkness and tunnel complexity are slowing them down. Time is running out. How long do the trapped miners have? Ambassador Daesung asked. 4 hours, maybe 5, before the air quality becomes lethal, even in the deep sections? Taemin studied the display. The tunnels were pitch black according to the reports. The toxic gases made regular breathing equipment necessary. The maze-like structure meant search teams were getting lost or covering the same areas, repeatedly while missing other sections entirely. An idea formed in his mind. It was crazy. It would never be approved. But it might work. He approached Daesung and spoke quietly. I think Beak could help. The ambassador looked at him sharply. Explain. The rescue teams are struggling because their technology is failing, and the environment is too complex for standard searches. But Beak doesn't rely on technology. His senses are biological. He can smell survivors through the gases. He can hear heartbeats and breathing. He can navigate in complete darkness. And he's trained for search and rescue scenarios. Daesung was silent for a moment. You're suggesting we send your therapy tiger into an active disaster zone. I'm suggesting we use every resource available. Beak isn't just a companion. He's trained, certified. He's worked with rescue teams on Earth before I was assigned to him. This is literally what he was bred and trained to do before he became a therapy animal. The Council will never approve it. Then people will die, Taemin said simply. And we'll have to live with knowing we had a resource and didn't use it. Ambassador Daesung looked at the display, then at Ralvik, who was coordinating increasingly desperate rescue attempts. Let me talk to them. The argument that followed was intense. Taemin couldn't hear all of it from where he stood, but he saw the reactions. Killinar's mandibles clicked in what looked like disbelief. The Ulmer Collective Speaker's tank bubbled with agitation. But it was Torvak, the Kreth war leader, who surprised everyone. My cousin is in that colony, Torvak said, his voice carrying across the room. Her children are with her. If this human's beast can help save them, I will not stand in the way. It's a predator, Kulinar protested. Sending it into a crisis situation is insane. It could panic, become violent, attack the rescue teams. Could, Dusung emphasized. But his record says he won't. And right now, we're losing people while we debate. I say we use every option available. Ralvik looked at Taemin. Can you control the animal in those conditions? Darkness, toxic gases, chaos, injured beings? Can you guarantee it won't become a liability? Taemin met his eyes. I can't guarantee anything in a disaster. But I trust Beak completely. He's saved lives before. He can do it again. The scientist Farrell spoke up from her observation station. I have been studying the human and his companion for weeks. The bond between them is genuine and deep. The animal responds to the human's commands even in stressful situations. I believe it's worth attempting. After more debate, Rolovic made the decision. We'll try it. But Taemin, you're going with the tiger. If he goes in, you go in? Understood? Understood. An hour later, Taemin was suited up in protective gear. Beak wore a custom harness with cameras and biosensors that would transmit back to the station. The rescue shuttle held a small team, Taemin and Beak, a Vorath engineer named Nilkath who knew the colony's layout, and 2 Kreth soldiers. One of them was VOR single quotes gash dot. The Kreth soldier had volunteered, though he didn't look happy about working alongside Beak. I still think this is madness, he muttered. Bringing a beast into danger. That beast might save your fellow Kreth, Taemin replied. Try to remember that. The shuttle docked with the damaged colony. The airlock opened, and they were met with darkness and the hiss of emergency air systems struggling to compensate for the contamination. Taemin's helmet sensors showed toxic gas readings. Visibility was nearly zero. He knelt beside Beak and spoke in Korean, their private language. Find them, friend. Like you were trained. Find the survivors. Beak's nose worked the air, filtering through the chemicals to find organic scents. His ears swiveled, listening for sounds the team couldn't hear through their helmets. Then he moved forward, confident despite the darkness. The team followed. Taemin kept one hand on Beak's harness, trusting the tiger's navigation. The other team members followed Taemin, a chain of trust through the darkness. Left, Taemin called out as Beak turned. He's found a trail. Nilkath checked his partially functional scanner. That corridor wasn't on our search grid. The rescue teams missed it. They moved deeper into the complex. The toxic gas readings increased. The darkness became absolute as even emergency lighting failed. But Beak moved steadily, following scents and sounds only he could detect. After 20 minutes, they found the first group. 3 Vorath workers trapped behind a collapsed support beam. Beak sat down and huffed, his signal for a find. The team moved in to extract the survivors while Taemin praised the tiger and gave him water. Incredible, Nilkath breathed. We'd passed this section twice with drones and found nothing. They continued. Beak led them through tunnels that seemed identical, but the tiger never hesitated. He found 2 more groups, including a cluster of Ulmer in their protective suits. Each time he sat and signaled, waiting for the team to handle the extraction, then disaster struck. A secondary collapse sealed the tunnel behind them. The team was cut off from their exit route, trapped in the same maze as the survivors. Vergash's breathing became rapid over the cum system. We're trapped. We're trapped. The darkness and confinement were getting to him. Breaking through his warrior training. Tae-Min felt his own panic rising. Trapped in darkness. Toxic air. No way out. His mind flashed back to floating in the debris field, watching his friends die, waiting for rescue that took hours. His breathing became shallow. His vision narrowed. The panic attack was coming. Beak stopped walking. He turned and pressed his massive head against Taemin's chest, purring. Even through the protective gear, Taemin could feel the vibration. The solid presence. The reminder that he wasn't alone in the void this time. Breathe, he whispered to himself. Just breathe. The tiger stayed pressed against him until his heart rate slowed, until the panic receded, until he could function again. Vergash watched this in silence through his helmet visor. The great warrior panicking, the supposedly weak human finding strength through his bond with an animal. It was a lesson delivered without words. "We need to move," Nilketh said. "Find another exit?" "Beak can find one," Taman said, his voice steady now. "He got us in. He can get us out." The tiger led them forward, navigating by senses the team couldn't understand. They found more survivors along the way, including Torvak's cousin and her children. The young Kreth were terrified until they saw Beak. Something about the tiger's calm presence seemed to settle them. "The beast is not afraid," the older child observed in their translated language. "So we should not be afraid either." Finally, after 2 hours in the maze, Beak led them to a maintenance shaft that opened to an intact section. The team emerged with 17 survivors. Exhausted but alive, the rescue station erupted in activity as survivors were treated. Medical teams swarmed around the Kreth family. Torvak himself was there, gathering his cousin and her children into his arms. Tay-Min sat on the floor of the rescue bay, too tired to stand. Beak collapsed beside him, panting from exertion but tail wagging slightly. The tiger had performed flawlessly under conditions that would have broken most trained animals. Vergash approached slowly. He removed his helmet, his scaled face showing emotions Taman had never seen there before: respect, gratitude, understanding. "I was wrong," the Kreth soldier said quietly. "About you. About the beast. About what strength means." He looked at Beak. "I panicked in there. I felt weak, useless. But you had your companion, and he gave you strength when you needed it. That is not weakness. That is wisdom." Taman was too tired to do more than nod. They mocked human bonds with beasts, until his apex therapy companion arrived. The news spread across the Galactic Council networks within hours. A human and his therapy companion had saved 17 lives in a mining disaster where standard rescue technology had failed. The story was impossible to ignore. Footage from Beak's harness cameras showed the tiger navigating through absolute darkness, finding survivors, remaining calm in chaos. It showed Taman trusting his companion completely, following where the animal led even when logic said it made no sense. It also showed something else. It showed a human having a panic attack in the middle of a crisis, and it showed his companion bringing him back from the edge. That moment played on news feeds across 100 worlds. Not as mockery this time, but as revelation. The council chamber was packed when they gathered 3 days later. This time, Taman wasn't standing alone in the center. Beak was with him, and no one objected. The tiger sat calmly beside his human while representatives from across the galaxy watched. Ambassador Daesung stood to address the chamber. This council questioned whether human therapy companions were legitimate medical treatment or primitive superstition. "I believe the recent events at Titan IV have provided a definitive answer. Not only is the bond between humans and animals real and beneficial, it proved more effective than our combined technology in a critical situation." Killenor, the Vorath representative who had been most vocal in his mockery, clicked his mandibles slowly. When he spoke, his translated words carried a different tone than before. "This council was wrong. I was wrong. We judged based on our own experiences and limitations. The Vorath do not form emotional bonds even with our own kind. Our relationships are functional and hierarchical. We assume that humans forming bonds with non-sapient creatures was a sign of evolutionary weakness." He paused. "We failed to consider it might be a sign of evolutionary strength." Torvak rose from the Kreth section. The war leader's presence commanded attention. "My family lives because of this human and his companion. I witnessed something in those tunnels that I did not understand before. When the darkness and confinement threatened to overwhelm us, the human did not pretend to be strong. He acknowledged his fear, accepted help from his companion, and then continued forward. That is true strength. Not denying weakness, but facing it with support." The Ulmer collective speaker's tank bubbled as they prepared to speak. Our scientists have been studying the human-animal bond since the Titan IV rescue. We are beginning to understand the biological and psychological mechanisms involved. The relationship provides emotional regulation, stress reduction, and cognitive support through neurochemical pathways we had not previously identified. But more than that, it provides something we cannot quantify: companionship, trust, love. These are concepts the Ulmer collective struggles to understand because we experience existence differently, but we can no longer deny their power. Farrell, the Ulmer scientist, stepped forward with her extensive research. I have documented over 200 hours of interaction between Taemin and Beak. The bond is genuine and operates on multiple levels. Physical contact provides hormonal regulation. Routine care provides structure and purpose. The companion's presence provides security and reduces anxiety responses. But most importantly, the relationship is reciprocal. The human cares for the animal. The animal cares for the human. This mutual dependency creates strength rather than weakness. She displayed her findings on the chamber screens. Graphs showing Taemin's stress levels before and after Beak's arrival. Video showing Beak's behavioral responses to Taemin's emotional states. Comparisons between Taemin's work performance and cognitive function with and without his companion. The data is conclusive, Farrell said. Humans evolved alongside animals. They domesticated multiple species over thousands of years, creating partnerships that benefited both parties. This ability to form cross-species bonds appears to be unique in the galaxy. It is not weakness. It is one of humanity's greatest strengths. A new representative spoke up, a species called the Delmer who had been silent during previous debates. This council should consider applications from our own people. After witnessing the human and his companion, several Delmer citizens have expressed interest in attempting similar bonds. We have no tradition of this, but we are willing to learn. Ambassador Daesung smiled. Earth's therapy companion programs have been refining their methods for centuries. We would be happy to share our knowledge and training protocols with any species interested in exploring this possibility. The conversation shifted from whether human-animal bonds were legitimate to how other species might develop similar relationships. It was a complete reversal from the mockery that had filled this chamber just weeks ago. After the session ended, Taemin found himself surrounded by representatives asking questions. How were therapy animals trained? What species worked best? Could their physiological differences accommodate similar bonds? He answered as best he could. Feeling more confident than he had since arriving at the station, Vergash approached with another Kreth soldier. This is my brother, Rax, the soldier said. He fought in the border wars. He suffers from what you humans call trauma. The darkness, the violence, the loss. He has not slept well in years. Our meditation and strength training help, but not enough. He paused. Would a companion help him as yours helps you? Taemin looked at the other Kreth. Rax's scales were darker than Vergash's, and his eyes held a haunted quality that Taemin recognized from his own reflection before Beak. It might, he said carefully. Different beings respond to different treatments. But if he's willing to try, Earth has programs that work with non-human species. We've successfully bonded therapy animals with some of our alien allies. What kind of animal would suit a Kreth? Rax asked. Tae-Min considered. Something that matches your culture. Kreth value strength and loyalty? Maybe one of Earth's working dog breeds. German Shepherds or Belgian Malinois are intelligent, strong, and fiercely loyal. They're trained for military and police work, but also for therapy. Or perhaps a wolf-dog hybrid for something closer to Beak's presence. Vergash looked at his brother, then at Beak. The tiger was lying down now, conserving energy, but alert. Can we meet him properly? Slowly, Taemin said. He spoke to Beak in Korean, telling him what was happening. The tiger rose and approached the two Kreth with measured steps. He stopped just out of reach, waiting. He's giving you the choice, Taemin explained. Extend your hand slowly, let him smell you. Don't make sudden moves. Rax reached out with a trembling clawed hand. Beak sniffed carefully, then pressed his head into the Kreth's palm. Rax's eyes widened. He is warm, solid, real. That's what matters, Taemin said. When everything else feels like it's falling apart, they're real and present and solid. They don't care about your past or your fears. They just exist with you. Over the following weeks, the station changed. More beings approached Taemin with questions. Guo's research paper on human-animal bonds circulated widely, sparking interest across multiple scientific communities. The Galactic Council formally recognized Therapy Companion programs as legitimate medical treatment. 3 more humans at the station applied for companion transfers. Hannah requested a border collie, citing that she worked better with high-energy animals. A human engineer named Minsu applied for a therapy cat. A security officer named Sujin requested a golden retriever, but it wasn't just humans. A Vorath engineer submitted an application to adopt and train with a Terran corvid, believing the bird's intelligence would suit their logical mindset. A Omer scientist wanted to attempt bonding with an octopus, a fellow intelligent sea creature. Even a Kreth warrior formally requested information about Earth's working dogs. The mockery that had filled the corridors during Beak's first weeks was gone, replaced by curiosity and respect. Beings no longer pressed themselves against walls when Taemin walked past with his companion. Some even greeted them. Ralvik approached Taemin one day during an exercise session. The security chief had been observing regularly, no longer as an enforcer but as a student. I have a question, the Vorath said. The bond you share with Beak, it requires trust, yes? Complete trust, Taemin confirmed. The Vorath do not trust easily. Our psychology is based on hierarchical verification and logical proof. But watching you and your companion, I wonder if we have limited ourselves. Trust cannot be proven logically. It must be experienced. That's true for any species, Taemin said. Trust is always a risk, but it's a risk worth taking. Months passed. The station settled into a new normal. Beak's presence was no longer exceptional, but accepted. The tiger had become a fixture in station life, his calm demeanor helping others beyond just Taemin. Children from various species who visited the station were fascinated by him. Scientists studied him. Security respected him, but the real changes were harder to see. They existed in the way Torvak now advocated for mental health support in Kreth military culture. In the research programs, Forel established to study cross-species bonding. In the way Vragash now spoke about strength, including the ability to accept help. One evening, Taemin sat in the observation lounge with Hana and Ji Woo. Beak lay sprawled across the floor.